So everybody is trying to be limitless. Everybody is trying to have this idea that limitation is a problem. But by the end of this video, I'm trying to convince you that having limits, most especially the limits that you impose on yourself, is actually the path to life. And this idea of limitlessness is a lie. This idea of you being limited, sometimes it's a marketing scheme, right? Or it's done by people to sell you an idea. In most cases, they haven't even done it themselves. So let's talk about what it means to be limitless, right? Yes, in our very spiritual essence, we are limitless. But we have to use our self-imposed limit to actually achieve our goals. So for example, check it out in every area of life, right? Even for people that say, I don't have time, what they mostly mean is, I don't prioritize that task. But in every situation, if you look at it very well, if you know how to use limitations, there is no way you will not achieve growth. There's no growth with limitlessness, right? Because if you look at it, even in spiritual essence, right, when you believe you're limitless, you don't really do anything. You are content, you are okay, you're perfect. So there's really no need to grow. And there's not a single soul that is limitless, yet still grows. So what really happens? If you study spiritual texts, when you become limitless, what happens? You just stay there, probably don't get born again, you get enlightened, you leave your body, you're done. Right? That is the very essence of what being limitless. But when you're limited, precisely when that limitation is self-imposed, that is where growth can begin to happen. So for example, when someone says, I don't have time for something, if you've ever noticed, right, when you take a task that is close to the deadline, you often achieve it, right? I think if you're familiar with the idea of Parkinson's law that says that a work, right, will fill up the time you literally allocate to it. So if you have a task and you give yourself 2 days to finish this task, guess what? It's going to take 2 days. But if you give yourself what? 2 hours, it is most likely going to take 2 hours. Maybe that is the reason that I find it very easy to work closer to the deadline than a distance away from the deadline. Yeah, it's a problem, but I think that rush to want to do it, right? And if you look at it very well, see that period where you have a very limited time is one of the times you can actually have the best work, because limitations actually is the bedrock of foundation. That is why Steve Jobs over and over again said, stay hungry, stay foolish, right? Because even despite the fact that Apple has billions of dollars at their disposal, right? If you look at it, that money has always been locked up out of the country in some other countries, because they fully understand that whenever they begin to feel like they have excess money, what really happens? They begin to invest in a lot of rubbish. They begin to bring in executives who are much more bothered about maximizing quarterly profits. And then before you know it, the businesses begin to spend ridiculous amount of money on ridiculous products. And it's a matter of time before they lose focus, right? Now, why constraint is also a part of why constraint is also sorry. Why constraints also make you better is because they force you, right, to think with a box. They force you to create a structure so that it's that structure that allows you to get better at something. So I know that we all have this idea of, oh, I need time. You see, think about it, right? If you look at people who keep procrastinating their goals, I'm not referring to like the goals that they want for themselves. You most likely see that they feel like they have abundant time. They feel like they have much more time ahead of them. So yes, and even gets worse whenever they are watching videos like, oh, don't worry, you can be 40, you can be 50, and still live your dreams. Yeah, well, why don't you start now? Yes, why don't you start taking the action now? If you know it to take time for you to see results, why are you not taking the action now? It's because there's a high chance you believe that you have too much time. And now, I have like a couple of stories, right, that this thing has happened to me that made me realize that, hold on. It's when I had a very little time to plan some things, that is when everything turned out to be my best. 2 things. First was my workout story, right? I work out for about 15 minutes per day, and I discovered that not to sound cocky, yeah, but I had a better body than people who worked out for 2 hours. And I figured that it was not about the workout itself or the amount of time I spent at the gym. It was about everything. Your lifestyle choices outside the gym, your diet, your sleep, and the efficiency of the workout you do inside the gym. was my secret. And what happened was I beat more than I could chew as a freelancer. I took on way too many projects. I really did not have time to go to the gym. That is why my gym became the first thing I did whenever I woke up. Right? Whenever I woke up, I went straight to the gym, got back, and handled the tasks for the day. And guess what? That is what led me to my 15 minutes workout. And literally, it was because of I had a 15-minute workout program that was so effective. I had a friend who felt like he saw my progress, and I told him that it was 15 minutes. It was something that he had no more excuse but to come to the gym, right? In the past, he was like, nah, I didn't have time to come to the gym. But knowing that I told him that I work out 15 minutes and he could see my results. Literally, he did this a couple of months later, he's seen results. He saw other in the past. He saw results within 6 months. No, within 3 months, sorry. Apologies for that. Within 3 months, he had already seen results. And since then, right, whenever we are at the gym and we have time to be at the gym, whenever we get to 50 minutes each, his body is already itching him to leave the gym. Even though when I want to practice extra kicks, maybe because I'm done with workout, I feel like I want to just drill some kicks in, some combos in. He just wants to leave the gym. Or he starts playing around the gym because he's already used to the idea of very, very short and efficient workouts. Second thing happened again. Earlier this year, I threw a party. I had about 4 days to plan that party, and that party was so successful that everybody is asking for a part two, a second version of it. Now, the major reason that I don't want to have a second version of that party right now is I realized that one thing that made it super interesting is the fact that there's a very short window to plan. And with that short window, we only got people that were serious about partying. But when we're thinking of literally setting a date for the part two, what we ended up discovering was we kept on adding more people, and by adding more people, you're adding more to our budget, right? Because yes, I brought in a large chunk of that money, but the story for another day. I discovered that literally as a couple of weeks ago, we were planning for the part two. Mind you, I'm not a party person, so we're planning for a part two. And I said no because by the time just a few days of planning for a party for a couple of months coming, we've already upped our numbers from about 30 to literally about 70. About 40 to about 80, 90. We've already doubled our numbers. I said no. When we were getting there, we'll simply announce it. Whoever can come is going to come, right? So that whole limitation, budget limitation, that is, I call it constraints, budget constraints, people constraints, time constraints, all came together and we used it to our advantage. I'm telling you this because whenever you have any excuse, right? I'm telling you this, if you take these ideas I'm giving you in this video and think of it, how can you make yourself, like if you have actually excuses, like for example, I don't have time to work out, I don't have time to go to the gym, but can you work out at home? Do you have 45 minutes to work out at home? Often you might hear no, you might say no, but if you zoom out and look at your life very well, do you have 2 hours for chilling? If you have 2 hours for chilling, can you have 45 minutes or 40 minutes, right, to actually work out? Right? Then the question mostly is, should I sacrifice my chill? Yes. Anything that involves stepping up in this life involves some level of sacrifice, regardless of the situation. If you want to have a very good body, you're going to have to sacrifice some things that you eat. I'm not even referring to time right here. If you're trying to build a bigger business, you'll have to sacrifice some things. Right? If you don't sacrifice some things, the thing that you want becomes to sacrifice itself. So for example, you see people who genuinely want to have a very good body, but they have some habits, right, of eating unhealthy food, eating very fatty food, yet they want to get shredded. But at some point, it's either they sacrifice the what they call it, the fattening food, right? Or they sacrifice the shredded body they are trying to achieve. Hey, by the way, I don't know if you're watching the video, just realize that I'm currently toning up my body and I'm dropping my videos, my workouts on this channel. If you're interested, or my other channel, just saying though. So let's talk about some instances where having limitations will work in your favor, right? But before I go into it, I have a note here. When you impose limits on yourself, you explore more ways to think around your limitations, right? And the perfect analogy I have with this is, for you to think out of the box, right, you need a box. A box itself is a limit, is a constraint. So if you want to think outside the box, you need a box. I know that people like to say, oh, I want to be creative, but creativity does not exist if there's no box. It's only a very few masters that were able to create something that were out of the blues. Being creative, if you're finding a system to be very creative, you're going to need to have a box, a limitation, a place I know is limited to you, and force yourself to create within and without the box. That is where creativity comes in. So you create a box and learn to think outside that box. Although you might say, why am I thinking out of the box if I create one? It's because it's better for you to think with structures in place. If you do not think with structures in place, you have a bigger problem than you think. So let's look at a couple of instances. One, self-discipline. Whenever you hear about discipline, what most people hear is, oh, you are restricting yourself. Like it's almost like you are a slave to the ideas that you have yourself. But the reality of it is that self-discipline is you're telling yourself, oh, I can do this, but I choose not to do it because I have some reasons. I feel like that action will not work well. And in this situation, I'll speak about fighting and somebody who is dangerous. I often hear somebody say, oh, I can't do this because it's not right. You can only claim something is not right if you have the capacity to do it, right? If you don't have the capacity to do it, then you're not virtuous. You're like a rabbit who is harmless, right? So you need to be able to do things right. For example, if somebody who has the opportunity to rob, to steal from an office, but chooses not to steal, he's more virtuous than somebody who does not have access to steal. Same thing with women. I often hear guys bash infidelity, but the guys who bash infidelity are the men who don't have that access to those women in the first place, right? So what that means is that if you had access to those women and you are saying that, oh, it's not a right thing to do, like one thing I'll tell you for sure is, as a guy, having a high body count or sleeping with too many women is not it. I can say it because I have tried it, I have done it. And one thing I'll say is that I will not stop you for reasons we can discuss in another video. Because whenever you tell guys to have as much sex as possible, what mostly happens is, because we are driven by vanity, a lot of vanity, it forces a lot of guys to self-improve. Now, when they self-improve, they had sex with a number of women. They discover that it's really not what they intended, or it's not as interesting as it looks like on paper. Then what happens? They switch, and then they actually become better, right? Because they realize that having a high body count is as good as drinking sugar every single day. At some point, it just becomes the norm. Except you're trying to you have some vices you are dealing with. Another instance here is taking chances. Yeah, same thing here. Some people literally, they tell you, oh, okay, fine. I wouldn't cheat if I had the chance to. Yeah. I cheating because you genuinely do not want to cheat, or you're not cheating because you're not capable of cheating. It's the same thing here. You have to become somebody who is capable. And I've also noticed that it's the people who know how to fight that literally are always the last to fight. Somebody who knows how to fight will not be the first to throw a blow. If you look at almost any fight situation. That is why I always tell guys to learn how to fight, because learning how to fight will teach you when not to fight. Learning how to fight will discipline you to not even look for trouble, because I made a video in the past about why real men should learn how to fight. And that was a video that I got super strong compliments from. So I'm grateful whenever I tell people this advice, that learning how to fight will literally teach you when not to fight, not that you should be fighting people. And the people who know how to fight are less likely to look for trouble if they are thinking correctly. Another instance here we have is Batman versus Joker. Now, if you look at it very well, Batman and Joker have strong similarities. They both are above the law, right? They both are flying around the city. The Joker is ready to cause as much havoc as possible. Batman is ready to cause as much sanity as possible. So they are kind of equal, right? But in opposite directions. And this is the kicker. Joker has no rules. Like, he can kill, he can steal, he can do everything he wants to do. He can use guns, he can even kill. Batman has a limitation, right? So that means he cannot kill, he cannot use guns, because if he could use guns, he could snipe people from a very far distance, right? Despite the fact that Batman is a billionaire, he's rich, he doesn't need to do all this. But he understands that With that limitation, he has to force himself to become better than the Joker, not just morally, but physically and mentally. He has to know when to beat the Joker. That is even when he catches the Joker, instead of killing the Joker, he hands him off because he understands that by killing the Joker, he has broken that contract, right? That is supposed to make him that's part of his framework for navigating the world, right? And that is super virtuous because he has the opportunity to kill the Joker, right? But he chooses not to. You see what I'm going to here? Well, how that limit he imposed on himself made him a better character against the Joker, made him a better person. And have you ever noticed that whenever they say you should become the bigger person, what they're mostly saying is you should become more disciplined. You should be much more logical. You should not take things. You should not take things. You should be less emotional about the situation. What that means is that you should actually control yourself. That is where self-discipline comes from. And self-discipline in its very self is you imposing limits on yourself, right? Like I keep showing you that limit is how you grow. Nobody is limitless and grows. It doesn't happen because you often see people who quote unquote they become limitless. What do you think happens to them after limitlessness? They begin to self-destruct because the mind is confused. The mind lacks even billionaires who we see are very, very rich, right? The richest billionaires, the richest people in the world, they have limits for a reason. They have limits for a reason. The billionaires, yes, they splurge here and there, but they splurge wisely. I mean, a good number of them who got there with effort and proper action. Because they understand the points. They understand that for them to maintain their wealth, they need to have self-imposed limits. Another instance is when people are riding their power bikes. I've kind of realized that if you're riding with these guys, no matter how powerful your bike is, you will always have a speed limit. And literally, coming from looking back at it now, looking at the fact that my riding instructor told me that the guys who did not have limit are always the first to die. Most of them crash their bicycle, and a good number of them are in the hospital, a good number of them are in the grave. Well, no, that does not mean that those that have limitations don't have accidents. But we're saying that those who like to be aggressive with their throttle, who when the team says we're riding at 120, about 80 to 120, they are shooting at 140, shooting at 160, right? Those guys are the guys who they often catch up with and see that okay, he has fallen down off his bike. Why? He likes the idea of total freedom to be limitless. And that is where almost to be very frank, right? At some point when I was small, I used to be very stubborn. I did not want the rules to apply to me. But growing up and seeing how much trouble that got me, I had to think twice. Then one other instance here is if you know Danko has this thing called the 2 hour writer. The 2 hour writer is simply a system for creating content because Danko says that he's trying to create content, right? But he only has 2 hours to create his script. So that 2 hours forced him, right, to become more effective in his writing. And I feel like this is a problem I think I have when it comes to creating content, right? Or when it comes to doing my task. I often mostly give up in a situation where I think I have enough time. But when I know I don't have that much time, I do it. Same thing with most people. I mean, most people do it too. Whenever you think you have too much, you have abundance, so you have an abundance budget, you have too many resources at your disposal, at some point, it becomes a distraction. Speaking of distractions, right? You often see startup founders or founders start a company. The moment they have good amount of money coming in, guess what happens? They feel that they have that feeling of limitlessness. And what happens? The mind goes into destruction. The mind goes into chaos. You see this thing over and over again. So they ask yourself, why become rich if you know that you are still going to limit yourself from how much you can spend? Because that limit is what causes you to go to the next stage. When you feel like you're limitless, then there's no need to go to a next stage. There's no need to set a goal, right? Because you're very comfortable. And then, like I said, your mind will begin to seek distractions. Have you ever wondered why celebrities will get so rich, then in a couple of years, they become broke, right? They feel like they have crossed all of their limits. Now they begin to self-destruct. But if you look at it very well, you're not different from them, right? You're not different from them. If you ever notice, if literally, if somebody goes to put $100 million on your palm right now, what would you do? What would you do with it? You might say, "Oh, I want it," but if you actually zoom out, that money might be more of a distraction than a blessing. So see how having limitations. So this video is long, quite alright, but I'm giving you multiple directions to tell you how this itself will make you much more powerful. If you're ever trying to study something, right? If you try to apply this thinking of being limited, of self-imposing a limit, you become better at it. So if you're trying to learn something, you're trying to start something, a business or something. If you have taken maybe a course or two, start something. Hit failure, try to fix that particular part that has a failure and move on. That limitation is what makes you better. Same thing. So if you have any excuse, right? What this video's essence is, if you have any excuse, you need to understand that creating that limit for yourself might be your winning ticket to actually overcoming the excuse. So lastly, I will say that whenever you see founders, right, precisely startup founders who receive money from investors, a lot of them feel relaxed. They feel like they cannot do all they want to do, and they can begin to do things that they never planned to do, which in itself is a very huge distraction. So I really hope that in this video, I was able to convince you that the constraints that you put around yourself, right, makes you a better person. That you should not see limitation as something to hold you down. You should not see limitation as something that is trying to stop you from doing other things. No, look for how you can work with it. So what that means is, if you have 1 hour and you feel 1 hour is not enough for working out, think of how you can get an effective workout in that 1 hour, because that is where most growth comes in. That is where most growth comes in. So I like to say that if you stay this long, I can tell that you are somebody who takes himself very, very serious. Now, I want you to look at this, right? Look at me in the eyes and understand that you have done the very best by staying this far. So I want you to look at your life. What limitations do you think you currently have, right? And ask yourself, if I'm to force myself to work with this limitation, what can I do? And that reminds me, I remember when I was trying to get a camera, saying that my content I need to shoot on a camera. And after buying my camera, I discovered that I saw people with their iPhones creating better content. I discovered that it was never even the gear itself, but the storytelling. And I see people who literally have better gears than me tell me that their best content or their best stuff was shot using their cheapest gears. So most of their expensive gears I almost never used. So they buy them because they felt like that was what they needed. So I started to trick that in. So I know there's somebody who is stressed about taking care of himself and upgrading himself. If you find this video very helpful, do somebody else a favor of sharing it with them. It's that act alone that will cause other people to embrace limitations and know how to do it to actually grow, rather than feeling limitless and feeling stuck. Because limitlessness actually makes you stuck, doesn't make you grow. And yes, I know you break limitations, and guess what you do? You create new ones. And that, my friend, is how you grow. So thank you very much for staying this far. I know you take care of yourself. I know you take yourself serious. So share this video with somebody who you know takes himself serious or is about to take himself serious. That act alone helps the channel grow. So thank you very much. Talk to you soon. And bye for now.